It started as an ordinary morning, just another day in my life. The sunlight poured through the small window in my bathroom, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to awaken my senses, but a heavy fatigue clung to me. With a yawn, I looked into the mirror, expecting to see the same familiar face staring back at me. However, I was met with something far more unsettling. At first, I thought I was seeing things. My reflection seemed just a fraction too slow, a heartbeat behind my own movements. I dismissed it as sleep deprivation, but as the days passed, the oddities multiplied. It began with small things. My reflection moved differently, blinked at odd times, and sometimes it smiled when I wasn't. The first time I noticed this, I was brushing my teeth, the buzzing sound of my electric toothbrush filling the room. My reflection wore a wide grin, while my own lips were firmly set in a frown. I froze, toothbrush hovering midair, heart pounding in my chest. Thinking it was merely a trick of the light, I turned my head, shaking it vigorously. When I looked back, my reflection was normal, mirroring my confused expression. But the unease lingered like a shadow. I began to dread, every time I had to face the mirror, the possibility of my reflection's sinister game looming over me. A few days later, the behavior escalated. I was getting ready for bed when I caught sight of it. The reflection was staring at me, eyes wide, unblinking. I turned away, feeling a cold sweat prickling my skin, but when I glanced back, it hadn't moved. It remained fixed, watching me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. My heart raced, and I felt an overwhelming urge to escape the room. That night, I pulled the sheets over the mirror, desperate to shield myself from its gaze. I thought that would be the end of it. I tried to convince myself that it was just a reflection, a mere trick of light and shadow. But when I turned off the lights and closed my eyes, I could still feel its presence, lurking just behind the glass, watching, waiting. As the days turned into a week, the oddities intensified. Each morning, the reflection became bolder. It moved when I didn't, mimicking my actions with a slight delay. I began to avoid looking in the mirror altogether. Instead, I'd brush my teeth and wash my face with my eyes averted, but it wasn't enough. I could sense it like a heavy weight in the air. It was there, behind the veil of the glass, observing my every move. One particularly unsettling night, I was jolted awake by the sound of whispered laughter echoing through the dark room. It felt almost playful, taunting me. I strained my ears, trying to discern the source, but the laughter faded into silence, replaced by a sickening stillness. My heart pounded as I turned toward the bathroom, the mirror reflecting the shadows of the room. Against my better judgment, I approached the mirror, pulling the sheet away with trembling hands. My reflection stood still, a mirror image of my fear. But as I gazed into its depths, I noticed something horrifying: the smile. It was wide and menacing, far too exaggerated to belong to me. My heart raced as I stumbled backward, but the reflection remained, eyes sparkling with a sinister glee. In a panic, I stumbled back, my breath quickening. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I wanted to scream, to break the spell that seemed to hold me captive. But as I turned to flee, a chilling thought struck me. What if my reflection was trying to take my place? As the days turned into a blur of fear and dread, I could feel the reflection's power growing stronger. It seemed to feed off my fear, drawing closer to the edge of the mirror with each passing day. I tried to avoid it, to look away, but the moment I did, I could feel its eyes boring into my back, a relentless presence that wouldn't let me escape. One night, after a particularly taxing day, I found myself staring into the mirror again. The air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. I could feel the reflection watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and tried to convince myself that it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wanted something from me. Just as I was about to turn away, it happened. My reflection smiled, a cruel, twisted grin that sent a jolt of terror coursing through my veins. I felt a shiver race down my spine as the reflection raised its hand, mirroring my own. But then, it stopped, its fingers twitching as if it were contemplating its next move. In that moment, I understood. Every time I looked away, my reflection stayed behind, and it was no longer content to be confined to the glass. It wanted to break free, to step into my world and claim my life as its own. The idea sent waves of nausea crashing over me. Desperation clawed at my mind. I had to do something, but what? I considered destroying the mirror, but I feared that would only make it angrier. Instead, I decided to confront it. It was now or never. Gathering every ounce of courage, I approached the mirror, the moonlight illuminating the room. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaking but defiant. "You can't have me." For a moment, silence enveloped the room. Then, the reflection's smile widened, eyes glinting with something dark and twisted. "I want to be free," it whispered, the sound like ice scraping against metal. "You belong to me now." I felt my heart race as I backed away, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. "No, you can't take my life," I screamed, but the reflection only chuckled softly, its voice echoing in my mind. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged forward and pressed my hand against the mirror's surface. It was cold and unyielding, but I could feel the energy pulsing beneath my fingertips. "I won't let you win," I shouted, and in that moment everything shifted. The reflection faltered, its smile wavering as I pushed against the glass with all my might. It roared in rage, and for a brief moment I felt like I was breaking through. But then, it fought back, pulling at me, trying to drag me into its dark world. In a final desperate attempt, I pulled my hand away and stumbled back, gasping for breath. I could feel the mirror's grip loosen, and I turned to flee. But as I reached the door, I heard it whisper one last time, filled with malice and hunger. "You can't escape me. I'll always be here, waiting." With that, I bolted out of the bathroom and slammed the door behind me. I collapsed against it, heart racing, breath coming in gasps. I thought I was safe, but the dread that had settled in my stomach told me otherwise. The reflection was still there, lurking, watching, biding its time. That night, I lay awake, fear gnawing at my insides. I tried to drown out the whispers, the mocking laughter that echoed in my mind, but sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, the twisted smile, the gleaming eyes. Days turned into weeks, and I became a prisoner in my own home, too terrified to look in the mirror, too scared to face the darkness that waited just beyond the glass. I avoided every reflective surface, knowing that my reflection was out there, waiting for me to falter. But I knew deep down that I couldn't hide forever. Eventually, I would have to confront it again. The weight of dread pressed down on me, a reminder that my reflection wasn't just a trick of the mind. It was something far worse, something that wanted to take my place. And as the nights grew longer and the whispers grew louder, I realized that my battle was far from over. The reflection wanted my life, and it wouldn't stop until it had it.